Sauer, to your last point, could you be more precise as to the source of this immunity?
The source of the immunity is principally rooted in the executive vesting clause of Article 2, Section 1.
And how does that happen?
The source of it, Justice Thomas, I think is, as you described in your separate opinion in Civitofsky, for example, that the executive vesting clause does not include only executive powers laid out explicitly therein, but encompasses all the powers that were originally understood to be included therein. And Marbury against Madison itself provides strong evidence this kind of immunity, a broad principle of immunity that protects the president's official acts.
And happy Sunday, and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, April 28th, 2024. We're so happy you decided to spend some time with us. Val Atkinson is here as always. Hey, Val.
Hello.
Well, we're going to jump right into this, Val, because there's so much was happening this week. I was in Arizona for most of the week, which is interesting. And I'll talk about my time in Arizona because it's going to be germane to the conversation today. In the lead into the show, you saw or heard some of the oral argument from Trump v. United States in the Supreme Court, and it's about whether or not presidents have immunity. There was also another interesting case this week that there were oral arguments for Moore versus United States about whether or not doctors can be prosecuted for performing abortion services and whether or not EMTALA, that's the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act of 1986, apply. And then we'll talk about both of those in the first segment, Val. Let's go straight to, I think I want to do Moore first, Moore versus United States. Moore is the Speaker of the House of Idaho. Idaho passed a bill saying that even for the life of the mother, there's no exception. Idaho would not allow a doctor to perform abortion services to even save the life of a mother. But EMTALA, which is, again, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act of 1986, says that a hospital has to do everything it can to provide emergency care. They must provide treatment until the emergency is resolved, and they must make an appropriate transfer if they can't do it at their hospital. So let's start there, Val. Idaho is one of those states that have these laws on the books that basically ban abortion. And so they want to pass this thing saying that the state has absolute right on anything related to medicine. And the U.S. government says, no, that's not exactly it. So as everybody knows who listens to the show, Val Atkinson was Professor Val Atkinson before he was the another banana on the deal. So put on your professor hat, Val. Let's get into some constitutional law here. What does the state of Idaho stand to gain by putting doctors in jail if they have to perform an abortion to save a woman's life? Or is this whole abortion thing here in Idaho just another matter of politics?
It's strictly political, Ed. They stepped out on the national stage with Dobbs v. Jackson, and now they got to uphold that. And everybody is on trial that talks about that. Are you for or are you against this whole business of abortion? And I step back just a little bit, and the way I look at that is they're trying to convince the American people that they love this unborn child so much that the mother has to die in order to protect that unborn child. And I thought of a situation where this child that we're talking about, this unborn child, may be the 5th, 8th, or 9th child of the mother that we're talking about. And all of them could be less than the age of maturity. You are willing to let this mother die to put these other children in harm's way to save an unborn child. I mean, it doesn't really make sense at all what they are doing, except when you look at it from a political standpoint. They are trying to show their bona fides in terms of their conservative posture here. I am conservative, and I'm going to show you that there's nobody to the right of me. I am so right, I will kill everybody and put people in jail if they do anything against our conservatism. And the way we want to do things. I think it'll be best seen several years down the road when we look back at this, Ed, and say, how in the world could we have been about this? How could we have allowed this to happen? Where were we? And I'll tell you where we are. I'll answer that futuristic question right now. The conservatives have us to a point that we're down in the weeds. And we're going to talk about this more when we get to the Supreme Court. But we're down in the weeds discussing this, that, and the other, or not discussing this, that, and the other, when they are playing politics. They know which way they want this thing to go. And it's so really a horrible thing to think about, that the lives of mothers are in the balance. The careers of healthcare professionals are in the balance while they play politics. And at some point, we have got to expose that to the rest of the American people, that this is about healthcare. This is about a woman's right to choose, but it's also about politics that the conservatives are playing.
Yeah, it's 100% about that. You know, one of the things that struck me, Val, like I said, I'm a weirdo. I listen to oral arguments from the Supreme Court when I have no time for anything else, right? I'll be out on my morning walk and I'm going back over the week and I'm listening to these arguments, because one of the things that it's clear to me is that the Supreme Court may be the actual branch of government that has more control over your life, right? And then we spend all this time thinking about the presidency and even Congress. They have clear limitations, because the court can come back and say, well, EMTALA doesn't cover this, that, or the other. So let's talk about the Supreme Court. Your boy, Clarence Thomas, who didn't talk for damn near 30 years, now is usually the first person to ask a question. In Moyle, he was also the first person to speak up. He and Alito tend to do that now, when they used to be pretty quiet. They would let Breyer or somebody else, speak first. What have we learned about the Supreme Court, as Donald Trump was able to put three people on the court? Three people on the court. It's not likely that there's going to be a vacancy anytime soon unless something catastrophic happens. And to be honest, the place where there may be a chance for somebody to leave the court is actually on the Democratic side, because Sotomayor and Kagan have been there, as long as anybody else. I guess Alito and Thomas, you're probably going to have to roll them out in a wheelchair. They're not going anywhere. I've been listening to Stephen Breyer a lot. He has a book out right now, and he's been talking about how he thinks that the court is completely wrong, that the court is out of control, that is politicized. And Breyer sat on the court. He knows Thomas, he knows Alito, and he's very critical of them, saying that, they know that they're playing pure politics with this. Before we talk about Trump v. United States, talk to me a little bit about Clarence Thomas and his newfound voice, and why the hell does he feel emboldened to speak up? Because I got something to say about him in Trump versus United States.
Well, Mitch McConnell gave Clarence Thomas his new voice. And he did that by disallowing Barack Obama to appoint anybody to the court. Merrick Garland was going to be the appointee. And Mitch McConnell said, no, I won't even talk to him. All of this gave a supermajority to conservatives on the court, which in turn gave Clarence Thomas his voice, that he knew what the court looks like, and he could say whatever he wanted to say now, and in most cases have applause coming instead of boos from the rest of the court. So he feels comfortable. He feels like it's his turn. Plus, we look at seniority. And of course, there's been a lot of people now placed on the bench that he can look around at Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Barrett and all three of the liberal women, if we can call them that. And of course, he's been there longer than any of them. What do we got? 2 people that's been there longer than him out of 9. So he feels a sense of entitlement now to take these positions that he's taken and be the senior man that he has given himself the right to be, and go from sitting on the back bench and not saying anything for 30 years to leading the argument and being the first in line to set the tone for where the court is going. We are in trouble as a country when you got a guy like Clarence Thomas setting the tone for one of the 3 branches of government in the United States of America.
Yeah, I want to remind you, you're listening to or watching The Deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson. It's Sunday, the 28th of April. We're talking about the Supreme Court. First, we start off with Boyle versus United States. Now I want to shift to Trump versus United States and back to this whole notion that Clarence Thomas thinks he's the new Chief Justice. Because this mofo, and I use the term affectionately, mofo, will now feels emboldened to always start the conversation. And in Trump versus United States, Thomas basically gave a softball to Mr. Sauer, who is the attorney for Donald Trump, and said, "Hey, isn't it that Article 2 powers that we're really talking about here, that the president can do pretty damn near whatever he wants to, and this is all established, way back from the very beginning." And Mr. Sauer goes, "Yeah, basically, yeah, And then Alito jumps in, who is the other clown that decided now that they want to speak all the time, and he says, by all intents and purposes, you could prosecute maybe George Bush for going to Iraq, or prosecute Biden for his border policy, or prosecute Obama, for bombing innocent people in the Middle East, and maybe an American citizen got killed during the bombing. But isn't that what we're opening the door to? No, hell, it's not. But Alito and Thomas gave that impression. So we know clearly where they're going to come down, right, Val? They're going to say that the president can damn near do anything he wants to, and there's no repercussions. And the question that came up in the appeals court was, does that mean you can assassinate somebody, your political opponent, and there be no retribution? So let's listen to one of the justices asking about that, and then we'll talk about it.
Qualified immunity does say that whatever act you take has to be within what a reasonable person would do. I'm having a hard time thinking that creating false documents, that submitting false documents, that ordering the assassination of a rival, that accepting a bribe, and countless other laws that could be broken for personal gain, that anyone would say that it would be reasonable for a president or any public official to do that.
Your Honor, as this court said very persuasively in Fitzgerald, the allegation that this particular act would be done for an unlawful purpose or was unlawful could be made in every case. And therefore, if that were the doctrine, that the allegation of improper purpose is what deprives the objective acts of their immunity, then the immunity would have no purchase. And that's reflected in many of the other court's cases.
So, Val, basically, they're asking Sauer, hey, wait a minute. Is there no fence around the presidency? Are you saying that literally there's absolute immunity? And the only thing that they kept going back to was, well, if there's treason, or if there's bribery, or if there's an impeachment or whatever. Val, again, put on your scholarly professor hat here. What were they trying to do back in 1789? The country is forming. You had these articles of confederation that just weren't working out. They tried to come up with a constitution that's more specific. But my contention, and so is former Justice Breyer's contention, is there's no damn way that people in 1789 could have foreseen a Donald Trump. That they felt like that impeachment would have taken him out, which it should have in this case, but it did not. So if you don't impeach, he's still a citizen. He still should be up for indictment because they didn't want a king. So tell me about what was going on in 1789 when these people were trying to make a constitution. Were they trying to make a president with absolute immunity and no accountability?
You hit the nail on the head when you said that they didn't want a king. That was their primary mission, is to have a form of government totally different from the monarchies that they had experienced in Europe. Totally different from anybody having absolute power and giving all the power to the people. That's what they wanted. So when it came down to Article 2, you look at all of the things that are in Article 2, the things that are void from Article 1, and how Article 3 gives certain power to the court system to play referee between Articles 1 and 2. And at no time did they intend for Article 2, we're talking about the presidency now, to come up and shield somebody to be king. There is no way. But digressing from that to one point that I think Donald Trump and his boys are stupid on, and I would think that Jackson or somebody on the court should ask the question is, if you win this case and we grant immunity to Donald for everything Donald Trump has done, does that mean that Joe Biden can kill Donald Trump tomorrow and not face retribution? If it does, he is stupid for arguing for immunity, because he needs to understand that this immunity that he asks is not for him as an individual, it's for the position of the presidency. That means everybody has it. Everybody will have it. So he's kind of signing his death warrant by asking that. Those are the kind of questions I wish that some of the more liberal, more progressive people on the court would start asking these people, because they haven't thought this thing through.
Yeah.
Really, it's not about the weeds that they're in right now, as you and I talk about all the time, Ed. This is about delay. This is about the business of giving Donald Trump some modicum of cover for some of the things that happened on January 6th without giving him full immunity. Nobody nowhere ever has given a thought to having the president have full immunity. Nobody. But to say that there are exceptions, there are times when we could narrowly tailor, I love these words, the issue around certain things that have exceptions within them, that some of the things that he does are not prosecutable. And that's all they want to do, is to say that.
Yeah.
And then to have people go and argue, well, this is one of those things that the court was talking about that's not prosecutable, okay? Or this is, and have them to argue to the extent that they narrowly tailor this thing to say that, okay, the first 4 are prosecutable, but this one is not prosecutable. Well, hell, that's the one he wanted to be not prosecutable.
Right.
Okay? In the first damn places, reason that they're there. Okay. Yeah. And the court is playing a role, has gotten out of the business of being the third branch of the government of the United States of America. They are almost playing the role of being the defense attorneys for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They are trying their best to find a way to unlevel the playing field so that whatever this guy has done, He can't be touched.
There's no accountability at all.
There's no accountability at all. And
so
they are doing this in a bad way.
Yeah, so that brings me to the last thing on that, Val. The other thing is there was a lot of conversation about Richard Nixon, and specifically Fitzgerald versus Nixon. And then also, when Nixon was told he had to turn over the tapes in his case, and that led to not Nixon being prosecuted because he resigned and left. That was the deal everybody made. And then Gerald Ford decided to pardon him, regardless of whether he had been indicted or not, right? So there were a lot of political decisions made. It wasn't a technical thing on the Constitution, whether or not Nixon could have been indicted or not. He should have been. And even Nixon admitted that he should have burned the tapes. I don't know if you remember the Barbara Walters interview where Barbara Walters said, "Do you regret keeping the tapes?" And he said, "Yes, I should have burned them."
Yeah.
Then there would have been no record of this at all, and there would have been no accountability at all. But the accountability came because some people did go to jail over the break-in of Watergate, right? G. Gordon Liddy and some other people did have to face the music. But again, a political decision was made not to prosecute Nixon, not because people thought it was extra constitutional. They thought, okay, we're rid of him and he's gone. And even his party kicked him out. In this case, the Republicans will not kick Donald Trump out. I don't know what the hold is that he has, but he has a hold on him. You know what? I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, we want to shift gears, kinda, because we're still going to be talking about Donald Trump. This time, indictments in Arizona. I told you I was in Arizona last week. Indictments in Arizona over fake electors, and then his trial in New York. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Sherelle James, and I am CEO and co-owner of My Local CFO. We provide outsourced fractional CFO services, and what that means is that as a business owner, you are good at what you do, but sometimes not so good when it comes to the numbers. And so we handle that for you. We help you understand what your numbers are saying so that you can make better strategic decisions, as well as help you budget and forecast so you know where you're going for the future.
Local CFO fits a niche that's in today's small business climate. People need good accounting, but they don't need full-time accountants.
My Local CFO, financial solutions for a stronger future.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We're here chopping it up a little bit. We're talking about Trump versus United States and Moore versus United States. We've been talking about the Supreme Court a lot lately, Val, because it's clear that they have a lot of power. And all the way back to Marbury versus Madison, the court has been asserting that they are the arbiters of truth. In this case, the truth whether or not a doctor can perform abortion services as an emergency in the state, and also whether or not there's absolute immunity for the president. So we'll continue to monitor both of those. I suspect there'll be a decision much later than needs to happen, especially in Trump versus United States, essentially giving Trump a break in hampering Jack Smith. To your point, that I think especially Thomas and Alito have decided that their role is to keep Donald Trump out of trial. However, Donald Trump hasn't been able to keep himself out of trial. There's a guy named Alvin Bragg up in New York, another colored person. Notice that the colored people have been successful in getting Donald Trump in the court. Letitia James got a big judgment in New York. Alvin Bragg is proceeding with a criminal trial. It's actually going on. They seated a jury. They got people hearing evidence. And then, of course, our girl, Fani Willis down in Atlanta, who would have been in the throes of a trial had it not been for them trying to sully her reputation and try to determine who she should be sleeping with instead of this guy named Donald Trump, who apparently likes to sleep with porn stars, Val. So let's start with the guy who sleeps with porn stars while his wife is pregnant, that guy. And tell me how this trial is going for Donald Trump. Michael Pecker, who was the publisher of the National Enquirer, has basically said that he was catching and killing stories for Donald Trump. Is that not what we've heard so far?
That's exactly what we've heard so far. And to answer your first question, how is this trial going for Donald Trump? I'll say it's going pretty good, because their whole strategy from the beginning has never been to refute the facts that the prosecution is going to lay forward. It has, or sully the reputation of witnesses. It has always been the hope that there will be one juror that is not totally convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump is guilty of these charges. And I think that possibility is still there, that there's one or more people who saying, I don't care what the evidence is. I don't even want to know the true meaning of jury nullification. All I know right now is that I ain't voting for him to be found guilty on anything. I don't care what you say. So that is their hope. So regardless of the information that comes out, how far we go down in the weeds, or who the witnesses are, or what cross is about, or redirect is about, that's sort of side issues here to what's going on in that jury deliberation room, and how successful are those other 10 or 11 jurors going to be to convince this one or two jurors to, hey, cut out the crap and let's vote on the facts and the law. When you look at it that way and concentrate on the facts and the law, Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble. But all he needs is one to say, oh. So that's his strategy right now. And it hasn't even started yet. Because his trial starts once the judge gives the case to the jury and they go into deliberation. That's when Donald Trump's strategies start right then.
Yeah, as I was listening to some of it, a lot of it's just prurient, right? It's about sex. It's about his probably dozens of other stories that were killed about that could have been detrimental to him or whatever, blah blah blah. About the fake stories that they made up about Hillary having cancer. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a National Enquirer story. And David Pecker saying that not only did they kill stories, but they made up stories about Ted Cruz's father killing JFK. Right. Those kind of things. And the curiosity to me, Val, is that Donald Trump is on trial. You're presumed innocent until proven guilty. But back to your jury nullification, it's entirely possible for all of us to sit here and know one thing happened, but the jury have another outcome. We've seen it time and time again in the Rodney King, and I don't know why we even call it the Rodney King case. Rodney King wasn't on trial. He was beaten, bludgeoned to death on video, and the cops walked. But then in the OJ trial, where it appeared that OJ may have been guilty, right? God rest his soul, and hopefully, he's made up with his maker, regardless of whether he did it or not. But when the jury nullified in that case, everybody was outraged on the other side, right? So there's outrage to go around, I guess is my point, is that nobody's going to be completely happy about this. But in the case of Donald Trump, I think Alvin Bragg has a dilemma here that you have a person in Michael Cohen who actually went to jail. He was prosecuted by the Justice Department that was run by Donald Trump. So that should absolve Alvin Bragg of being looked at as being partisan in this, right? But it's not. It has not. It's made it, people have totally forgotten the fact that Jeff Sessions was the Attorney General when Michael Cohen was prosecuted by the Justice Department for lying about the money. I think it was retribution against Michael Cohen by Trump that got him prosecuted. If the facts remain the way they are, And let's just say Donald Trump's convicted. Let's play that. Let's play this out. Let's say he's convicted, and then you have to come up with a sentence. We are in some really, really uncharted territory here. Do you think that people are afraid that if it got to a conviction that you have to sentence this guy to jail time, what the outcome could be? Or is it that these loudmouth MAGA people really won't do anything crazy like we think they'll do? They did their one crazy on January 6th. They won't do crazy again if Donald Trump is actually convicted. I know that's a long question, but you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
well, yeah. Well, the first thing is that the progressives and liberals. Let's take this side first, okay? These people, they are concerned in one way that all of these facts and witnesses and all of these things in this particular case don't really mean anything, right? It don't mean anything because Trump is going to be let go in some kind of way. All right. Well, what they need to be focusing on it, and you and I talk about it all the time, is let's get out of the weeds. Let's get out of the weeds and let's stay on top of the case and make sure everything is being followed as it should be in terms of the law. If you do that, you have a chance to convict. Because the thing about it is that even a conviction is going to bring about an appeal, and it's going to get to the courts, the high court anyway. And all he's looking for is one group to go along with him, either the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. And then there's the issue about the Secret Service. What role do they play if he is convicted and has to go to jail, right? But getting back to what I was first talking about, the liberals and the progressives, these people are concerned about the image of the presidency of the United States of America. That's their problem. That's why they can't go after this guy and not be concerned about whether he goes to jail, whether he gets hard time or just prison time, whether he's busting rocks or solitary confinement. Not even worried about any of that kind of stuff, but just abiding by the law. They are playing up this image to the rest of the world that our chief executive is so great and so good. He's not above the law, but his moral values are so high that we can't do this to him. It brings down the presidency for us to convict him of a crime and put him in jail and allow him to be classified as a normal criminal. Can't do that. This is the president. Well, is he above the law? Oh, no, he's not above the law, but we can't allow that to happen. And then the Trump lawyers are sitting back saying, hey, these guys are arguing with themselves. Hell, I don't need to do anything. Right. They are digging a hole. Maybe I ought to give them another shovel, you know?
Yeah, you know, that is what's problematic to me, Val, is that we talk about it a lot here, the mythology of America being like, you know, some place that's sacrosanct and also ordained by God to be in existence on top of everything else. And so that means that certain presidents are absolved from doing anything. Now, we know that Bill Clinton lied about getting oral sex in the White House. And that was the worst thing ever. Now we have another president here in Donald Trump who tried to kill the vice president, overturn the election, and did any number of things, including talk about killing people in his administration if he had a chance because they wouldn't go along with him. Bill Barr even admitted to that this week, even as he said he would vote for Donald Trump, the former attorney general who quit, who was supposed to be so outraged at Trump's behavior that he quit said he would still vote for Trump, even though Trump said he would kill people who didn't agree with him. And Barr left it off, saying, hey, I think he was, just exaggerating, overstating. Well, whether he was or not is not germane to me. What matters to me is this elevation of the presidency to be somebody above the law. I remember people yelling at Barack Obama that he was a lie during the State of the Union when that had never happened before. So it's all relative to these people. I think they decide when the president is above the law. And we know clearly in the case of Nixon, the Republicans then gave him a break. Gerald Ford did not have to pardon him of anything, but he did because he said for the sake of the country that he pardoned. And so I think you have this mythology in America that somehow the presidency is something, akin to being, I guess, a demigod. Maybe you and Jesus is sitting on one side and Donald Trump sitting on the other side. I don't know. I know that sounds sacrilegious for some folks, but that's absolutely how some people kind of couch this. Let's move on from that and do the last piece here in this segment. Trump's on trial, but there's going to be trials for some other folks, this time in Arizona. So we have Michigan, Arizona, and Georgia, where people are being indicted for trying to mess with the election. Again, tampering with or trying to have false electors. Let's look at that clip and then we'll talk about it. So that's the Attorney General for the state of Arizona. I happened to be in Arizona this past week, and that was the source of much conversation on TV in Arizona on the news. One thing that surprised me, Val, just an aside, is there was less talk about this border being overrun by immigrants in Arizona than it was on Fox News on the national level. I'm sitting, 100 miles from the border, and nobody's saying a word about the border. But they were talking about this indictment of these 11 people, some of the same names that have come up before that tried to have fake electors. And this time, the Attorney General in her statement there said that these 11 people tried to steal the election. And that's what the contention is in Georgia and in Michigan. What is the risk, Val? We don't have to dig too deep into Arizona indictments, but what is the risk of this happening with state legislatures that are controlled by Republicans of doing shenanigans to throw the election to the House of Representatives? Because that's really what they were trying to do, right?
Yes. It's a big risk, Ed. And that's why I have always been a proponent of really going in and changing, if not repealing, the 12th Amendment that has to do with the Electoral College. That's where you find all of this information about contingency elections, contingent elections, and those kinds of things where California and Wyoming become equal in some way in terms of their authority or ability to elect the next president. California having over 40 million people, Wyoming having just 500,000 people, but they both get one vote in voting for the president. It's antithetical to how our supposedly democratic system is set up. Why, if you're going to do that, why give California 53 or 52 seats in the House of Representatives? If you're going to turn it around and give one vote to California and one vote to DC, or one vote to Oregon, or one vote to North Dakota, it's ridiculous. So the 12th Amendment needs to be changed. We got a 27th Amendment on the books, which has to do with Congress giving themselves pay raises. The 28th hadn't been done yet. There's no 28th Amendment. That needs to be the 28th Amendment, is the repeal of the 12th Amendment. Rewrite it. Let's do it all over again. And let's get rid of this crazy junk talking about the Electoral College and electors and who's the right elector and who's not. And let's elect our chief executive officer by popular vote. That's a real democracy. If you want to know the meaning of democracy, and the worst thing that can happen to democracy, I call it the kryptonite to democracy, is the electoral college and gerrymandering. And we have both right now on steroids. You can't do it.
Can't do it. And Democrats would have won 7 out of the last 8. So that's all you need to know. If we did popular vote, I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, we want to shift gears and talk some international stuff. Gaza is still a major problem, but it's also found its way to the American shores with campus protests. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Hi, it's Dr. BCW. Why are Black women in the U.S. dying at a rate 3 times higher than white women during pregnancy or shortly after? It's an alarming issue, often thought to be caused by a lack of access to care. But it goes well beyond access to care. In my TEDx talk titled Do No Harm, linked in the description, I share some of the causes contributing to this complex health crisis. I share powerful stories, including the experiences of Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players of all time, who nearly lost her life while giving birth, and my own experience, which almost cut my life short. These stories highlight the prevalence of unconscious bias in healthcare and race-based practices that are contributing to Black women being dismissed, overlooked, or simply not believed when they state something is wrong. Yes, this experience could happen to anyone, and not being heard is a shared concern. However, it is important to recognize that some groups face these challenges much more regularly, which results in higher mortality rates. These are serious issues we must acknowledge and address rather than dismissing them as a lack of access problem, as so often happens when discussing Black health issues. Please take the time to watch my TEDx talk titled Do No Harm. I share some valuable insights about the impact of race-based medical practices, unconscious bias, and the urgent need for change within our healthcare system. And if you find the talk helpful, please share it with others. This is Dr. BCW. Thank you for watching Beyond Clinical Walls. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and leave a comment. It really helps the channel. Thank you for your support.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We've been talking about stuff, Trump versus United States, Moore versus United States, Arizona indictments, Donald Trump is on trial. Val, what? I hate to make this show about Trump. You remember we used to have a rule that if we said Donald Trump's name, we got to play some video of him. I'm going to play some video. This is him at court trying to talk about how it's unfair to him, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll talk about him a little bit more.
I want to start by wishing my wife, Melania, a very happy birthday. It'd be nice to be with her, but I'm in a courthouse for a rig trial. It's a rig trial. Terrible. But we're doing very well in this rig trial. Everybody knows it. Yesterday was a big day, but I do have to begin by wishing Melania happy birthday. She's in Florida. I'll be going there this evening after this case finishes up, this horrible, unconstitutional case. So we have another day of court in a freezing courthouse. It's very cold in there, on purpose, I believe. They don't seem to be able to get the temperature up. It shouldn't be that complicated, but we have a freezing courthouse, and that's fine. That's just fine. Let them keep handing it out. There's a rigged trial. Thank you very much, everybody.
So, Val, he's being a punk. He's whining about it being cold in the courtroom. Blah, 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 blah. Everybody else is in the courtroom. They got to be there. They got to be there because of him, because he was indicted, because he did something wrong. At the same time, Val, there are people that are still going to vote for him. So I need for you to explain to me why these people are still going to vote for this guy of all people who's sitting up there complaining about it being cold in the courtroom. Val, explain this to me. I am still flummoxed about why this is happening.
Well, the closest I can come to an answer on that one, Ed, is the fact that a great number of people that are supporting and are going to vote for Donald Trump are really not voting for him as much as they are voting against Democrats and brown and black people. They are afraid to death that this country is going to lose its white rule. That even when whites become the minority in this country around 2045, 2050, whatever your choice is, that they would rather institute something called white minority rule, akin to apartheid. They'd rather have that than to have the country go down that hole of being ruled by non-white people. That's why they vote for him anyway. They can't stand his guts. They know he's done something wrong. But even during these times, they'd rather have this guy in office and the white nationalists and whoever else he may be bringing along with him. They'd rather have that than have the likes of Al Sharpton and Barack Obama and Angela Davis and the ghost of Fred Hampton and Huey Newton and all of these people and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. They can't stand the thought of this.
Or Val Atkinson.
Yeah, running the government, you know? So they will accept a Donald Trump who has vowed that he ain't in that camp with some of those people of color that I just named. And that's what they want. And they've gotten emboldened, Ed, and I'll say this and I'll break on it. They've been emboldened. They did not, those uber conservatives, they did not want to be associated with the whole notion of white minority rule or apartheid at one point in their life or the history of this country. They don't care about that anymore. Mm-hmm. They could care less if this is a white minority ruled country, if you want to call us apartheid. That's why they don't care. And I know we're going to talk about this later. That's why they don't care if you call the state of Israel Zionists and call them committing genocide and instituting apartheid. If you want, you can say all of those things. They don't care about that because the difference is either that, because with Israel, that leads to the westernization of the Middle East, which is our goal. And without Israel over there, we don't think that we have a chance in Hades of having the West control the Middle East.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I tell people this all the time. The baby Jesus is a capitalist. You know, this whole construct of white Western Christianity is that Jesus does not care about the poor. He cares about corporate profit.
Right.
Westernizing the Middle East, to your point, means that there's more capitalism that enriches people like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg and those kind of people.
I'm going to ask you a question, Ed, which I normally don't do. But you're the Middle Eastern guy with our duo here. Tell me, for the audience's sake, what language did Jesus speak? And if we could classify his nationality at birth, if it had to go on his birth certificate, what would his birth certificate have said his nationality was, and what language did he speak? Tell me.
I'm pretty, he spoke Aramaic, as far as we know, and he would have been a Palestinian. So there you go.
Goodness. And Palestinian.
Bethlehem is in Palestine, Val. Go figure. Go figure.
Yes.
So again, for my Christian compatriots, and my Muslim ones too, because they believe in Jesus as a prophet, they just have a different take on what his role is. but the fact is that he's not a dude from Detroit. I usually say from Sheboygan. You
Right.
know, they would think that Jesus is just some guy from Sheboygan who maybe works at the Chrysler plant. You know, and he's just like them in that
Yeah.
respect. He hates everybody. He's worried about, you know, whether or not the Detroit Lions or the Detroit Tigers win. They've taken Jesus completely out of the Middle East and plopped him down in America, and they've taken Christianity and moved it out of the Middle East and plopped it down in America. And somehow God has ordained the United States to be the one country. I know this is a little bit a field of where we were talking about Donald Trump, but I think it is actually the crux of it. If you listen to those people at those Trump rallies in Greensboro or in Wilmington or wherever you interview these people, the first thing they say is that they believe that he's been ordained by God to be the leader of the United States, and somehow the United States is some special country that is special in the eyes of God, which brings me to the campus protests that are going on
Yes.
over the Middle East. And a lot of attention has been paid to the one at Columbia University, for example, and which is kind of odd to me. It's another Ivy League school, and all these people on the right are exercised because they say that these students are being anti-Semitic, because they want a two-state solution in Palestine that they think is genocide. We're getting near 40,000 people that have been killed that we know about. Off of an incident that I will think everybody will agree October 7th was not exactly what the region needed. I think Hamas made a calculation that was incorrect by the way they proceeded, because they know they can't take on Israel face to face, one on one. So they were going to do this surprise attack. But when you deconstruct it, it wasn't a surprise attack at all. Netanyahu knew that it was coming. He let it happen so he could use that guys to go in and wipe Gaza off the face of the earth, and maybe even just take it over once and for all and get rid of Gaza and the West Bank, and just incorporate them into Israel and force the Palestinians to leave. Because I think that's his goal. Because if you look at what we did in America, that's essentially what we did with the Native Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
God said that this is manifest destiny. The Native Americans aren't Christians, so damn them. We wipe them out. We force them into the smallest reservation possible, and we take over. And now Arizona, where I was this week, is now America. America. And, and God said that I can have it. And that's the way I think the state of Israel is proceeding. And these students that are sitting in at Columbia and other places have, you know, caused graduations to be canceled and all kind of other stuff, Val. So let's talk about that, the protest. Are they going about it the right way? And is there an end in sight to this?
Yes, I think the students are going about it the right way. And if you'll notice, Ed, this all started with, as you call them, Ivy League schools, and it became a catch-on kind of thing. If Columbia and Harvard and Yale are doing it, and then the students at Brown, you know, saying, hey, we got a little small state here, but we got to file for school. Let's us do it. And then there's Northwestern saying, we're not on the East Coast, but we're considered Ivy League too. And then Yale is saying, well, Harvard can't do anything that we, you know, can't be about too. And Stanford is saying, hey, we're way out here, but no educational standards can be complete unless you consider us. We're talking about all of these schools, but I haven't heard from one that's supposed to be the Ivy League of the South. You know, it's my school that I support, Duke University. What's going on with Duke University with the protests? Or they're endowed, they have an endowment of billions of dollars Where does it come from? Is it coming from Jewish supporters? Is it coming from some institutions and some businesses that have a lot of investments from people who support the state of Israel? What's going on with that? That's a big question in my mind, is why the Ivy League school of the entire South, there's no school below the Mason-Dixon line that has a greater Ivy League reputation than Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. None. So why didn't they join their sisters and brothers, starting with Yale and Stanford and Harvard, all the way out to Northwestern in the Midwest, and Stanford all the way out in the West? All of the great Ivy League schools of the nation just about have signed on to protesting this, except us here in North Carolina. Ed, why is that?
Well, Val, Duke is one of the schools in that cohort that do tend to have a lot of students from the Northeast. And they do have a significant Jewish population of students compared to some of those other schools. They have had a history of having, we like to I fondly call it the University of North Carolina, New Jersey.
Right.
Or New Jersey at North Carolina at Durham.
Right.
So, I think that has a lot to do with it. And then Duke has tended not to be a school of protest for a lot of reasons related to that. We'll leave it at that. Before we run out of time, Val, I want to play a clip from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is Joe Biden making fun of Donald Trump, and then we'll wrap this up.
So embarrassing, the statue of Robert E. Lee surrendered again. But look, age is the only thing we have in common. My vice president actually endorses me. I had a great stretch since the State of the Union. Well, Donald has had a few tough days lately. You might call it stormy weather. What the hell? Trump's so desperate he started reading those Bibles he's selling. Then he got to the first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. That's when he put it down and said, this book's not for me.
So, Val, Joe Biden, despite the fact that he is old, without a doubt, in terms of relative terms, in terms of being president, people live to be 100 that are very vibrant and can hold conversations or whatever, yada, yada, yada. And he clearly he shows that he still has a little bit of feistiness in him. He's picking at Donald Trump there. If Donald Trump and Joe Biden had a debate, who would come out on top? And are they ever going to have any debates in this election cycle?
I think there's two answers to that. I think if you look at the rules that'll be set up by the debating committee, Joe Biden would win. But if you ask people that didn't care about the rules, about who made the other guy look bad, who made himself look good or whatever, they said Donald Trump won. Because Donald Trump is not going to go by the rules. I don't care what they say. And Joe Biden is going to be saying, hey, the rules say that you must do this, or the rules say you can't do that. And Donald Trump has scored 3 or 4 points illegally because the rules are not set up for that. And that's why I'm on the side that says that if I'm a handler of Joe Biden, I say, you can't debate. You can't debate. You are in a lose-lose situation because you are going in this debate just like Christopher did against Baker when we had a recount down in Florida in the 2000 presidential election. It's going to be the same replay all over again. One guy is trying to win and the other guy is trying to play by the rules. So you can play by the rules and that sort of thing, but you're going to walk away giving Donald Trump another 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7 points in the polls because he made you look older than you are. He made you sound confused.
Yeah.
And he made points where it looks like he was he looked more presidential than you.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever
Right.
that means. So, my thing would be you didn't debate in your own primary. Why do you want to debate me?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would not give him that opportunity. He wouldn't debate Chris Christie,
Right.
Nikki Haley.
Yeah. But for the same reason, they're going to probably try to manufacture some reasons why Joe Biden doesn't want to debate Trump. And we should turn it right around on him and say, are they the same reasons why you refuse to debate your people in the primary?
Yeah.
What were your reasons?
What were your reasons? And nobody asked him that, right? Nobody really did. He got a free pass. Val, before we leave, we talk about sports a lot on here. I do want to talk about one sports story that I saw this week that was interesting to me. Reggie Bush lost his Heisman Trophy because of conduct they said was not conducive to the sport back in the day. Now, Caitlin Clark can make millions of dollars, and Armando Baycott can do commercials and all kind of stuff, right? I don't think any Dukies did any commercials because they're not that good over there. They don't get the same kind of deals that Tar Heels get. But on a serious note, students now make money playing college sports. And Reggie Bush had lost his Heisman Trophy, and now he's been invited back into the fold. They say you can come to the ceremonies from now on. Here's another new trophy. We give a new trophy to USC, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the right thing to do, right? But Val, tell me what's going to eventually happen. We had Nolan Smith on here a couple of years ago when all this NIL stuff started blowing up when he was still at Duke as an assistant. He went to Louisville, and unfortunately, things did not work out there. We need to get him back on and find out where he's going to land. But in the long run, he talked about his fear that kids are going to be jumping all over the place, and I think that's what happened to Louisville. Right? Is that it's hard to compete. You got to almost promise these kids, just extraordinary things to get them to come. And then you end up with a Final Four that has NC State in it, which I was really happy to see Kevin Keats keep his job. But if you looked at his roster, those kids had played at 3, 4 different schools, some of them. And then people like, Charles Shackelford, you remember that name from back in the day, Chris Washburn. Those kids were vilified for selling jerseys. And now you got people who are making millions of dollars, like Deion Sanders' kids and Caitlin Clark and Angela Reese. What's your take on this, and where is it going to end? Because I think betting has something to do with this too.
Absolutely, but I think now it's crystal clear, Ed, why the likes of Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski left college sports, and it may have something to do while the great Nick Saban down in Alabama left as well. But those are 3 great names in college sports right there. Saban, Krzyzewski, and Williams. And also, let's not forget the head coach of the Connecticut Huskies. These are not average, everyday names. These are big names in sports. They couldn't deal with what was coming up with the NIL and the portals and the one and dones and all of that. All of the control that college coaches had over their roster is almost gone. Somebody was saying that the average age of college basketball teams in the future is going to be 25, 26 years old. And, you'll be talking about 10 and 11-year seniors, and and just a whole lot of things going on that you don't normally associate with the game of college basketball. And where we are here, the mecca of college basketball in the Triangle area of North Carolina, where you got UNC and Duke. Listen, that was one of our big goals, is to bring along your juniors and seniors, and Carolina had senior night. I think the last home game of the year, where they recognized their seniors by letting them start the game. And it was just so much happening. Now, I don't know what they're going to do about that. They won't have any more seniors. Or if they do have a senior, he would never have played, never have started a game.
He would have been the water boy.
He would have been the water boy. So it has changed, and it's a good change for observers of the game, for people who like to watch the game. But if you're in it for the long haul and you are a junkie like you and I are about basketball, we would love to see the maturation of some of these kids that's going to be at the school for 2, 3, 4 years. But at the same time now, I'm glad that they're getting money. They should have been getting money all along.
Yeah.
While these coaches are getting $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 shoe deals on top of $8, $9, $10 million a year for coaching. Yeah, I coach Parks and Rec, and I don't make that much. But anyway,
$1.50.
At any rate, it's a kind of situation where it's a great thing for the kids. It's a great thing for people who just like to watch basketball. If you like to watch great players play against another group of great players, you're going to start seeing that. Even my Dukies have gotten into it, and we've got several people coming in from the portal and looking for even more.
Yeah, well, Val, again, we both played sports throughout our entire lives, and it's sports is a way to have lifelong relationships and stuff. The dudes you played basketball or football with, baseball with as a kid, they tend to be your friends until we all pass away from this place. And I know that people take sports very seriously, but at the same time, we talked about some real serious stuff at the beginning of the show, and I want to keep people focused on that. Voting is not a joke. Who's on the Supreme Court is not a joke. Who your president is not a joke. Who your governor is not a joke. And that's why we talk about all that stuff here. Before we leave, anything you want to tell me? Anything we're working on? Anything we need to know before the week starts?
Starting on a new book, Ed. Starting on a new research here, and that's what I call it. The Neil Armstrong playbook is before you finish a particular goal that you have and been working on for a while, start a new one. Don't be without something to do. And the title of my new book is The American Civil War in 3D. And, I love my titles that throw people off because they're thinking about sitting in some theater with glasses on, 3D. But in this particular case here, we're talking about the 3 dimensions of the Civil War: the military, the political, and the cultural. And it's very interesting in how all 3 of those come out with a perspective of how it impacted the African-American community.
See, that's why we have Val Atkinson on here, a smart colored guy that can talk about this stuff academically. I'm not joking. You should take very seriously the fact that Val Atkinson takes his time to do this every week. He could be sitting on his porch waving at cars going by, but instead he's still studying, he's still writing, he's still doing all the things. Again, I would not be the person I am without Val Atkinson, and there's a lot of other people out there who can say the same thing. So take very seriously encourage other people to subscribe to the podcast. You can always go to any of the fine podcast platforms, choose thedealwithericclark.com. If you subscribe, you never have to worry about it. If you go to thedealwithericclark.com, click on the RSS feed and just have it. And then you never have to worry about when we're on or anything, because we're not on the same day all the time, because I still travel a lot and Val still has stuff to do. So we may not be there a week, but we may be there twice in a week. So we don't want you to miss that. So get your friends and family involved and let them know. Listen, I hear music, so that means we got to go. But in the meantime, I always tell you, go out and do something good for somebody today. And I really do mean that. And we'll see you next time. Bye.